In my work after the PhD, working in many countries, again back in rural areas, working on conservation, working on development, I'm recountering back the issues of the local, and then recountering back the politics of development, really, and the dominance of economic growth, both in policy, both in the dominant kind of way of solving problems also. So economic growth is also a way to solve poverty, to create value for certain ecosystem services. So it's kind of what both our speakers have talked about, where we are trying to solve the problem with the mindset that created it. So I think in this space, encountering local social environmental injustices within this space, and trying to then engage in what does that mean? What does that mean as a research subject? How do we study it? How do we examine it, and so on? So that's kind of my pathway to kind of moving to the topic. Okay, so what I want to do is just to give a little bit of background in how the path that I have taken to analyze these issues, and also a little bit of a framework in how we should be thinking about these issues through multiple dimensions. Can I have the next slide, please? So when we talk about equity, or when we talk about social environmental justice, it's really a relativist notion, because what is equity or justice to you, to a person in the field, to a rural farmer in the field, to you as academics in Faculty of Forestry at Unhas, to me as a privileged researcher in Japan and in Stockholm, is completely different. So we have different perspectives of justice, or of equity, of fairness, and for whom is the world unjust, and for whom the world is just, is also very different. And I think this thinking about this also means that we cannot use one measure to understand what is equitable and what is just. You have to look at it, also along the ideas of bringing in a decolonial mind. You have to kind of look at things from different perspectives and be able to understand what they mean from the different perspectives. Because I mean, when we say that equity and justice is normative, it also means that it's very context dependent. And it also then thus depends on the histories of the place, the social ecological values of the place, and the cultures of the place. So those are all things that we need to consider. So it means measuring equity and talking about justice. It's very difficult to say, well, this is a little bit more equitable than that one, or there is more justice here than that. In what way? For whom? Who is often the subject of our examination of justice? Who is the subject of it? Who defines what parameters of equity we should examine? These are also questions that we have to ask when we tackle these big topics around equity and justice. Okay, the next, please. So what we have done in at least our research is to take an analytical lens that has many different dimensions of equity. And it is already challenging if we think about, we should look at procedure, when we think about inclusiveness and decision making. We should think about distribution, what types of costs and benefits are distributed, who bears all the benefits, who are getting all the, who bears all the burdens and who are getting all the benefits. When we think about recognition, what is acknowledged in terms of knowledge, in terms of norms, in terms of values. And finally, also the context within which we examine. This context have histories. This context have different type of social ecological systems. And this context also have different issues, whether it's about ethnicities or about access and so on. Can you go a next click? And so when we think about these, from our research, we start to identify all the deeper criteria about what this means. When we talk about distribution, how do we define distribution? What is fair? When we were in Vietnam assessing payment for forest ecosystem services, they said everything shared equally is fair. That's the most fair concept. Everything shared equally. But then underlying it, why did they say that? Because they also said at the same time, it should also be based on the amount of work you do. If you do a lot of hard work in the field, monitoring, planting trees, you should get a bigger share. So how do you reconcile this, it's equal or it's based on the amount of work you do? And to understand that, we kind of understood the people who said that everything equal is fair is because of the issues of trust. They didn't trust their village leader, who is politically appointed, not locally elected, because they were afraid of the benefits only flowing within his family. So they said, then everything being equal is very transparent. So it's not just about equality by itself, but it was equality because it's transparent and because it's linked to trust. So we kind of tried to examine every aspect of this. When we talk about distribution, it is also related to whether it's related to rights, related to responsibilities. When we talk about RED Plus and we give benefits to the local community, these benefits don't come just because they are living in the forest. They also come because they are then restricted from doing something. So, what is distributed as benefits also come with burdens from limited access. So that's a lot to discuss. The next, please. And then when we talk about procedure, and I'm sure many of you in your projects, you have to be very inclusive in your workshops, in your meetings, and you would make sure that there is a certain amount of equality in terms of men and women and older people and youth, and maybe between different ethnicities. And also that's this participation. But do everybody that is present, do they have voice? Can they actually say something? Or is this just I'm telling you, we are doing this project, here it is. Do they have access to the information? Is there accountability if there is an issue or if there is a problem with this, initiative or with the policy or with the project? So where are all these things? So it's not just about participation, it is also linked to legitimacy and process. Next, please. And also then I want to talk about context. When we talk about context, we talk about the capabilities that are in place following Amartya Sen. What is the starting point? What are the capabilities? What are the issues that are already existing? So what is about land tenure, about adat systems, about rights, the socio-political or colonial history that is already at place, the lines that are already drawn. So when we do initiatives, we come into a place that is already loaded. It's not a blank slate. So we have to also acknowledge that contextual differences are very important in terms of understanding justice. And the last point is about recognition, and I think this is really important. Recognition also means respect. It touches on the aspects of ethics that was discussed, but I think it's also about acknowledging and respecting and including different types of knowledge systems, local knowledge, indigenous knowledge, forest knowledge, and also understanding identities. Identities not just related to ethnicities, but identities that are often linked to nature. So very often identities are linked to forests, identities are linked to certain biodiversity. Some of the work that my students have done in northern Sweden with the indigenous Sami people really also acknowledged that identities are tied to, for example, reindeer and reindeer herding. That is a really strong part of identity. So it's not just about, ethnicity alone. And cultures. So culture is not singular, it's plural. And also understanding the culture that we are bringing in and the cultures that are there. So trying to think about all these things. So it is not trying to get at assessing social environmental justice is never easy. It involves unpacking all these dimensions. And also it means that we have to also challenge ourselves. How can you do this? There may be aspects we can improve or we can think about as we are doing projects or we're doing analyses where, there is, elements of justice or elements of equity in this aspect, but to know that also things are not equitable or unjust on others. So you have to look at it the whole thing and not cherry pick, I think, also certain issues. For us, it's very important to think about all of that equally, and everyone always says, then how do you analyze it? It is also up to I think it is also a way of rethinking how we do it, where it's not just a simple measure and a simple indicator and, simple ways of saying this improves, and if everything improves, everything is good, and if 3 out of 5 improve is good, we cannot think like that. So we have to kind of take a holistic view into that process. So I think it's a challenge. We are still learning. We are doing some empirical work with this kind of concepts in the field, and we are also kind of learning every time how to analyze and how to think about this kind of very difficult issues. So that's, I think, so this is still a journey, and this is not yet the only way, but, since I'm at an academic conference, I always put some references which you can look at later in your free time. So thank you very much.
Saya lagi, giliran saya. Oke. Okay, thank you very much. I think there is a delay between this laptop and the screen, yeah. So I just want to compliment a little bit on about the qualities, yes, how this policy logic creating inequality. Next slide, please. But let me also explain first the positionality, yeah. Yeah, I am Alif, lecturer in forestry faculty as well, and leading a local, managing a local journal called Forest and Society, and we also have a group, yeah, called Forest and Society Research Group, and we also have in forestry faculty we also have education forests that probably most of you already know. That when I was in a student, it is I remember it is only 1,200 hectares and become 1,300 hectares, and now I see the new decree is 1,400 hectares. Yeah, I don't know. In the next 5 years, probably it's expanding. I don't know. It is centralized, determined, and I think it is also now. I learned a lot also from this, how this forest policy determined, yeah, especially for the state forest boundaries, yeah. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, Ibu Grace already explained this about the conceptualization of the justice. In Indonesia, actually, we have Pancasila, yeah, and justice mentioned twice, yeah. Kemanusiaan yang adil dan beradab, humanity, for the justice and civilized, yeah, and also social justice, keadilan sosial bagi seluruh rakyat Indonesia, ya, social justice for the whole people. Justice, it is not only the foundation said that these 5 principles came from the values of the people of Indonesia on that time, but the narrative of justice at the moment, as we saw, it's determined by the political interests who determine justice and interpreted it and manifested in the policy process. Next slide, please. Yeah, and justice dimension, it is always associated with values and also the process of political decision making. I just want to highlight that it is the process of political decision making. It is very according to historical, as Ibu Grace already social and legislative context and the plurality of understanding of justice. And then next slide. This is the yeah. And how this policy trap or policy logic creating inequality, it is not only about following the logic of the policy cycle, yeah, as we know that the policy, since policy formulation, policy implementation, policy enforcement, and then evaluating the policy, it is not, but along with the cycles, a lot of a lot of system that creating inequality. For example, different problematization when they are formulating the policy. Who is problematized local? Who is determine the criteria of the state forest, for example? Why the social criteria is not mentioning on determining state forest, for example? It is only physical, slope, the intensity, rain intensity, something like that. There is no social criteria reflection on the criteria of the policy, for example, on stating, on determining. It is all about the political forest, not trying to integrate with the social aspect, yeah. And it is, they undermine the historical, undermine cultural dimension, and also disrespect local problematization. And when they come up with the implementation, it is only navigating by the bureaucratic politics logic, yeah. only the contestation between forestry or trade sector. It is not always linked with the syncing with the justice itself. Yeah, it is always trapped by the competition between agencies in both in the national level in the forestry, for example, and agriculture, and also contested in the local governments. And there is no consultancy. It is only a symbolic consultation. It is a selective instrument driven by their own bureaucratic logic. Yeah, and I just want to show you two examples of the law. Yeah, the undang-undang, the conservation law. Indonesia now has a new conservation law. It is a long story. I see it is almost 20 years discussion of this new conservation law. But is it really proper consultation public, because it's already have a long story of the consultations? I'm not sure all forestry students know that there is a new law of conservation law. And comparing to the, for example, Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja, a new creation job law, it's short, very short, and it's also problematic. It is not reflected all the issues of the rooted in the grounded issues. It's only serve oligarch interests. And we learn from this, this new conservation law, it is still like a hollow policy. I have a chance to read, to have read, yeah. In the grounded, they want to cut a tree. Yeah, they want to cut a tree, for example. It's a simple problem, but and with this dramatic symbolic, they state they will respect local, local community. There is a spatial zone. There will be traditional zone in national conservation area. But what is meaning the conservation, the spatial zone and traditional zones? Still not. They're still not allowed to cut a tree, for example. Yeah. It is two example of the how this and sometimes it is a deadlock politics for the local community use. It is different, for example, for the example a law on geothermal. Yeah, we remember there is a geothermal. Previously, geothermal, it is not under Ministry of Forestry. It is under Ministry of Mine. Yeah, it is under Ministry of Energy and Resources. But they identified that we don't have political momentum to revise the forestry law. So they revise the Undang-Undang Minerba, yeah, the law on economic resources, that state that geothermal is ecosystem services. And how it end up? Then geothermal become under conservation area. Yeah, if you see the structure of the Ministry of the Forestry, under the conservation area there is a sub-directorate of geothermal, and yeah. So, but it is different with the forest of the community forestry in the in conservation area. They are not totally recognized. Yeah, they say that the conservation area, they said that there is a conservation partnership, but they are still not allowed to cut their own trees, for example. So it is a deadlock. It is a deadlock for them, but it is advocating politics for the geothermal sectors. So it is creating such a lot. And for example, we also every year we print policies. We are overdose of policies, ya, peraturan menteri every year, peraturan. But what is meaningful? Is that any change? Is that fit with the local community? I also worried, is that our government asking the questions to the community? Yeah? Is there any, I don't know, because it is a simple problem. They just want to continue their kemiri, their kaldal nasib team cultivation. They just want that. It is a simple problem. Why they are not asking, for example? It is a real problem. Ibu Moira said that probably we need Ibu Siti Nurbaya to go there, to go here for solving the problem, because it is very centralized. Yeah, it's very centralized. We have a lot of policies, overdose policy, changing every year, but nothing substantial, and it's create another hollow policy. Yeah. 1 menit lagi, okay. And I just want to add one thing about the politic of dominant interpretation and discourse. Yeah, it is led by the local elite, or who has more access to the policy, for example. Okay, I just stop here and then give a chance to more discuss. Yeah.
Apologize, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the timekeeper already give me some notice. Okay, before we move to the next section with our discussion, I'm going to navigate some important points from the speech delivered by our speakers. Talking about the policy or the justice and injustice dynamics in the context of forestry areas, it is not a simple thing to understand. It needs a lot of works based on what Mrs. Grace has explained, that to measure what we call as equity, it will need a lot of works, because we have to consider many factors or many various items that are related to the context of equity itself, such as the point of inclusiveness and the point of distributions and the point of recognitions. Based on her experience in Vietnam, to create a justice or an equal distributed resources or dynamics needs a lot of works to do. It needs a lot of understanding, of course. Equity also talks about trust and transparency. So it's not a single indicator we use to understand more about equity. And also, Mr. Alif has have incorporated that talking about the justice discourse or narratives in the context of policy making, we found that practically most of the policy that already produced in this state, particularly in Indonesia, uh, are determined by the elites. Is that right? The policy that already produced in Indonesia over the forest sectors are mostly determined by the elite politics. And yes, and before we are going to the discussion section, I'm going to invite two of our discussants today. I welcome Mr. Let me see. No, I'm not memorizing the name. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Is it that I'm the colonizer right now? Me, okay. I invite Mr. Odi Selomane. Mr. Odi from University of Pretoria, South Africa, a senior lecturer at the Department of Agricultural Economics. He will share his experience in the context of enhancing justice or building justice narratives in the context of social forestry, maybe like that. And then we also have Mr. Nasirih. I welcome you, sir. Mr. Nasirih from PACOS Trust is a community-based organization dedicated to supporting indigenous communities in Sabah. So we will have more many information, actual information from his perspective. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, our moderator today. Yeah, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I will be happy to be here joining this conference for share what is our experience as a community. Yeah, that's where I come from. Yeah, earlier on when the coffee break time, I'm going out from this room and then I saw books there written by Dr. Andi, ya, melihat desa dari dekat. That's mean looking the villages is this I'm come from. Earlier on, we heard about our two excellent speaker here about talking about justice, no involvement, what is happen in the ground. This is true, even though a lot of policies is not really looking in the community side, I mean social side, in terms of how to do any conservation. Yeah. So my point here is I put main point here in terms of when we see our thematic themes today for this conference is well-being. So in terms of community, I'm not come from academic, but as a indigenous activist, yeah. So what my number one point is what is biodiversity is. For community is biodiversity is not only the forest, the land, the river, all those things, but must be community, human in circle. Cannot be dipisahkan begitu. Cannot be out from the circles, yeah, out from the circle. That is means of biodiversity. So when that's from that point, when look at what happened in the world now, look at when we are look back what happened, Rio 1992 convention of that Rio summit, world starting talking on climate change. We are facing climate change, and then world starting worry on that. And then from that in the middle is a lot of discussion, and then convention on biological diversity will happen, where more focusing on starting indigenous people starting participate in terms of conservation or protecting of the forest. And then 2007, UN will be adopted in the United Nations. Adapt in the United Nations. In the meantime, we have Paris Agreement, and that's it. All of the party is agree around 2008 or 2008. Yes, that is the scenario. That means is a lot of discussion at community, how community trying to involve on the decision making in the national level, in the international level. What is means of biodiversity? Point number two is what is community contribution to the conservation, to protecting forests? I think it is related to the question for the first session during in the Zoom online just now. Is when we are go to the community, a lot of our speaker also mentioned just now is traditional culture. Knowledge. A lot of knowledge, systems were practiced by the peoples, by the community in the village. Just remember when we are first coming on the 20th and then 21st, we go to Kampung Ramang there. During the sharing, the villagers saying that mountain, they point out the mountain from their fingers. Look like you point it in the laptop. Pop, pop, pop. They have a database. That means they have their own how to managing the forest. They knows the area. That's it. And then, but very hard here as an indigenous is how to translate that in the modern or in the modern language. We are saying here colonialization. Yes, we accept that, but in the same time, but because of that is in the systemic systems all over the world. All I mentioned is our challenging here is how to put that into narrative, into academic paper, how to put that where the villagers point out, and then from that they are using the information to find to fight the mining company. Yes. That's my point number 2. Yeah, number 3 is I'm share about a common value. Yeah. Yes, from the colonization before that, we think community think that conservation is not as individual. That's very important thing. Very that is a community. It's common for community. Everybody can use that, can go according the culture, the customary law into that villages. Yeah, and then number 2 is but after this is we are talking now is a bit also have a challenge on that in terms of controlled by the elites, all these things. So mostly they have their own property, they have their own resort into that area. That's also very. That's I think related. We're asking with the question from Zoom now where mangrove been in need or etc. Yeah. I didn't prepare presentation, but of presentation during the meeting, our meeting in Bongo Bongo is for community is conservation is what you see in the screen, yeah. Yeah, what you see in the screen. For a normal conservation is if you are in group, you will be catched by police authority. But for indigenous peoples is that I'm saying that means of common agenda. Yes, we are be guidance on this. I'm using these words always be used by my community, and I think every indigenous peoples in the village. And then for my conclusion is yes, when we are looking at the Paris Agreement, we have target how many percent want to conserve, but I'm sure academic, policymaker, government, indigenous peoples can play a role. So my question for myself here is how we working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nasirih. Please, Mr. Andi.
Yeah, hello, and thanks for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. Also want to start by saying that I'm not from a forested country, so although the conference theme is about forest frontiers, I personally am not from a forested country, but obviously the dynamics are similar in the ecosystems that I also come from. So most ecosystems in Southern Africa are open systems, but the issues are similar in the sense of people rely on those ecosystems for a range of benefits that we talked about here today. With that being said, I come from a very unequal place. So one of the themes of this is talking about equity. So South Africa in particular is a very unequal country. And so from listening to Grace's presentation this morning, which really helps us to expand our idea of how to think about equity. Typically, when we talk about equity, it's a very limited conception. When we talk about inequality, you hear a lot about inequality between countries, inequality within countries, and we're stuck on measuring these differences. So there's this stuckness around measuring equity and ranking who's more equal, who's less equal. And that distracts us from a more important question of understanding that equity is indeed more than just measurements. And I think what the framework that Grace put up illustrates this really well, that we have to be thinking about more than just distributing things and ranking and measuring who is falling and what position on the list. And for that, I think that this conception has really built an interesting body of research, I think, for me, that I'm involved in since a number of years now, focusing on this idea of multi-scale, sort of the multi-scaleness of equity. And what this means is that you're not only looking at equity in place only, and the reason for that is because the reason why a place is unequal, or the reason that you have inequity in any particular place, are not only originating from that place. So in a lot of times, I think we now have a pretty good understanding of most equity dynamics in a particular place, in a forested area, in a catchment area, in an ecosystem somewhere in the world, are not operating in isolation of the rest of the world. And most of the time, some things that are happening far away from where you're studying are playing a very specific role in how this place is shaped. And I give you an example of some cases that we're working with in South Africa. So we started a project a few years ago that's trying to understand basically the role of value chains. South Africa produces a lot of fruits that they send for export markets. So the idea was to understand what role does this reliance on export markets, what kind of role does it play in equity in a place where we were interested in? So we had a case study somewhere, and very quickly we realized that the more demand there is for fruits from this particular region that we're interested in, the more water demand is, the more the agricultural production in this area is using more water. And that use of water is creating a lot of conflict locally in terms of access to water now, because whoever can buy the most water then gets more access. And part of the further we dug into this, part of the narrative is that if you're using water for commercial purpose, your use is legitimized and privileged. And so when Alif, I was noting that people not being allowed to cut a tree, and I think this is the same mechanism at play, that you can legitimize a commercial use of a forest and call it economics in some sense, and illegitimize use for a livelihood. That is exactly the same dynamic we're seeing there. So people can use this water to produce fruits to send overseas to earn export money, but somebody else is not allowed to because they're not using it for any economic, or it's called unproductive use of the water. So in this sense, the logic is really the same. So I suppose all this to say that I think this idea of thinking about equity in all its multi-dimensions, for me, it's not to say at the end of the day, we have now identified who's the most vulnerable person in a place, but it's to say we need to recognize the multiple uses and that those uses are legitimate, as legitimate as any other use of a resource in a place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Odi and Mr. Nasirih. And now, before we are moving to the question and answer sections, I'm going to navigate a little bit more with what have Mr. Odi and Mr. Nasirih had taught us. So, in Mr. Nasirih's perspectives, that he explained that community nowadays actually already involved on already participating in the narratives of natural resource management or any kind of environmental related discussions. It is already mainstream, globally mainstream, but it cannot just stop in ideas, but needed to be more grounded. And the challenge in this context of justice and injustice and also access on what Mr. Nasirih's perspective is how to put that the equity narratives into more academic paper, or let the public acknowledge that there is a problem encountering the community, particularly in the forestry sector. And yeah, Mr. Odi has also shared his experience and perspective. It's kind of similar for what has Mrs. Grace explained before, because it needs multi-layering of definitions, conceptualizations of equity, like itself. Okay, so I'm going to give 3 questions, maybe 3 questions. Oh, only 1. Oh, sorry, running out of time. I'm going to give only 1 questions from the participants. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say, asking in where stage we can put our local ethnical group for get their justice and equality. For example, in our region, North Maluku, we have Togutil ethnical group who's battle with the deforestation and including the mining area, and sometimes they can get the good food to still exist in the forest. And the other side, we only always exploring them for our research, for our social project, but never get the main, main benefit for them, including also some of the children of them cannot access with the educational program. That's why we on in the modern era, we want to equality, we want to educate them, but sometimes also we still one day become the object of tourists and also for social program only. So I'm not the expert of sociality, but that's my question, where we will give them this, the stage of the equality and justice. Thank you.
It's a critical point addressing our roles as academician or social activists or something.
Thank you very much for the question, and I think it is really important to consider us as researchers and what is our role in the space of inequalities and our research. From our side, from my thinking, I always ask also, for whom does our research serve? And does our research just serve doing papers and teaching things, or for whom should our data serve? And our basic principle is always that our research should serve whom we are studying at whatever level, in the sense that the information is always shared back. The information can be used in different ways, and also that the information can be used in different struggles. For example, data can also serve existing land claim struggles and so on. And research can also serve as a voice to bring the issues upward as well. And that's also, I think, I see where our role is. But perhaps our colleagues who are in the field might also have, or Alif may have something to add first.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, the question is how to get the justice. Yeah, in our experience in Sabah is very take time. Not like we done project 1 or 2, 3 years. Because of in terms of this case, one more important thing is the humans. What we did in Sabah is mostly capacity building, because we are not governments provide scholarship, all these things, feeding, all these things. But what we can play as NGOs or academic, I think, is in terms of capacity building for the youths, for the women and the elders, where the more confidence, yakin, in the Malaysia, more confidence, more resilience into that situation, more confidence do the decision making, can negotiate with the a mining company or authority, local authority or pemerintah or government in the hiring level, yeah. And then, yeah, from our experience, we took on that, and then not just 1 or 2 years. That my experience is, I'm already 15 years as an indigenous activist in Sabah. Ya masih since I'm young like a mahasiswa here, yeah. It's because important thing is I put in the narrative that when you want to eat fish, don't give fish, but tell them how to fish, how to pancing, yeah. Because when you are tell them, they can eat fish anytime. Either they want to catfish the big one, a small one. That is our philosophy. We use it. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to add two extreme, yeah, according to the research. The extreme one is always came up with the solution things without deeply understand what is the problem, and they're going to, and after that it is come up only as a document of research, yeah. And then the extreme one is like our university tradition, yeah. They call it pengabdian masyarakat. And do you know what they did? They go one day and pasang spanduk, pengabdian masyarakat, pelatihan biogas, training biogas. It is called pengabdian masyarakat. Yeah, we did it. It's a tradition, yeah. And yeah, why do you laugh in Tata? You are pelaku. Yeah, and a lot of external subjectivity, yeah, came up with these things, and it is really a big gap with in the ground, and since in our group a lot of activists and a lot of also try to use this action research, participatory action research, and the problem of participatory, it is no ending. There is no time because it is a spiral things, yeah, a spiral thing. So it is and research. It is like Maria said. It is not subject to object research, but it is subject to subject research. They are the researchers. The Togutil is the researchers, and without and believe me that there is no external people can help them. They themselves can help themselves. Yeah, it is the research is always come up with the solution that the external things that can bring them solution. Yeah, but with this research get much more constructivism. Constructivism means subject to subject relations. Yeah, learning together with the community. Probably it will have a little bit change. Yeah, so please don't bring up spanduk pengabdian masyarakat and capture it as a credit for pengabdian masyarakat again. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So I think that's our wrapping of discussion for the second session before we are moving to the room parallel sessions, right? It is interesting discussion, of course. So into interpreting justice, we need it to be more, we need more examined by various tools. That's the first things. Particularly in the terms of the recognitions of community rights. It occurs in the middle of many policies which are driven by the economic motivations and subjective determinations. Okay? Yeah, please, MC.
Once again, give it a round of applause to our speakers, discussants, and moderator. To all speakers and discussants, please stay on stage. The committee has prepared gifts for all the speakers and the discussants. Therefore, I would like to invite Dr. Karno Batiran to present the gift. Once again, give a round of applause to our speakers and discussants for these sessions, for the wonderful insights around the field of the discussions. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we have arrived at our lunch break. I would like to inform you that the lunch is provided in front of this hall, and the room to enjoy your meal is provided below this hall. Simply access the stairs on your left and right hand sides once you exit from this hall. And the prayer room is located or is available at level 2. So for those who wants to do the prayer, you are kindly invited to go to level 2. And the lunch break is from now until 12:45. So once again, it's until 12:45. And after the lunch, you're not expected to come back to this room. So please take all your belongings, because the parallel sessions will start right after that at 12:45 until 3. All the information is provided inside on your info package inside the goodie bag.